Some of the wildest, most intense moments I've ever seen in nature happened in 2025. As part of the Animal Quest team, I investigated some truly horrifying animal encounters that year. It's hard to forget the sheer intensity of those moments. Let me tell you about one that still haunts me. It was October 7th, 2016. The affluent Boulder, Colorado neighborhood of Wildwood Heights was still asleep in the quiet darkness of early morning. The upscale residential development, built just 5 years earlier on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, featured winding streets lined with modern homes that backed up against natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator for a local tech company, was beginning her daily 5 a.m. jogging routine through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets and cul-de-sacs. Lisa had moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the community's promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. She was a dedicated fitness enthusiast who maintained a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding career, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Lisa's morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time when she could clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing an unusually dry autumn, with drought conditions extending well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas, as deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water sources. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about the wildlife warnings, but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrence, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wildcat species. Adult males weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability that allows them to leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters that rely on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine, with the mountain lion's killing bite proving instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was the case of Felicity Grant on August 19, 2017. She arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I find myself reflecting on the arrogance of assuming we're invincible, especially in the face of nature. The story of Felicity is a stark reminder. She deliberately ignored trail close signs, believing they didn't apply to her elite athlete status, even tearing down warning notices. It was a solo dawn run on Rabbit Ears Pass Trail, noise-cancelling headphones blasting electronic music, a backpack filled with raw steaks for a post-workout meal. That combination, erratic movement, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat, created the perfect storm to attract a mountain lion. This wasn't just any mountain lion. It was a 140-pound male, actively hunting in the area, his territory encompassing that very trail. He detected the scent of meat from over a mile away. He began his stalk, using the rocks and trees to remain hidden as Felicity ran along the ridge below. Then, as she rounded a bend, oblivious to the world around her, the mountain lion launched its attack from a boulder 15 feet above. The force was tremendous. Hind claws raked down her back, front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck, and those 4-inch canine teeth found their mark with chilling precision. Mountain lions kill with a specific technique, targeting the cervical vertebrae. In this case, the attack was executed with deadly efficiency. Over 400 pounds per square inch of crushing pres severed the spinal cord, causing immediate paralysis. Within 2 minutes, Felicity was gone, the mountain lion dragging her body off the trail. Her remains were discovered 3 days later, the scene a grim confirmation of a mountain lion attack. Then there's the story of Jennifer Walsh. It was December 3rd, 2014, and I can almost see her there, the fluorescent lights of the county animal shelter casting shadows across the kennels. She was only 25, a veterinary student volunteering on weekends, driven by the belief that every animal deserved a second chance. She was drawn to the difficult cases, the aggressive dogs marked with red cards, dogs slated for immediate euthanization. Diesel was one of those dogs, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He had a history of bite incidents, including a serious attack on a child. He was deemed too dangerous for adoption. But Jennifer saw something else in him, a vulnerability beneath the aggression. She convinced herself that his behavior was fear-based, that he needed one-on-one attention. His jaws locked, unbreaking. Jennifer clawed at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat. His powerful neck muscles shook her violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles weakened, her body going into shock. The attack was swift and brutal. Other volunteers heard her scream and rushed to the isolation room, but the door was locked. By the time they got inside, Jennifer lay motionless on the floor, her life draining away. Diesel stood over her, muzzle stained red, eyes still burning with aggression. Paramedics arrived quickly, but it was too late. Jennifer was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended by the very type of animal she hoped to save. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as clinical as his attack. The investigation was thorough. Jennifer had violated safety protocols, ignored warning signs, and placed herself in a dangerous situation. The shelter implemented new security measures, electronic locks, mandatory buddy systems. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools, a reminder that good intentions and academic knowledge are no substitute for experience and safety. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but for students studying wildlife conservation, a final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It was April 17th, 2018, and the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a facility that claimed to rescue primates but seemed to exploit them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries wouldn't allow. Gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers under the afternoon sun. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, visited the facility with her husband, Carlos, believing it was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, documenting animal care and recovery throughout her career. Her love for animals drove her to pursue veterinary technology training, working nights to support herself through school. She dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her degree through years of hard work. Her passion for primate conservation led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. She genuinely believed her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility called an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier separating visitors from the gorillas enclosure, with no additional protection or qualified staff supervision. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. Adult males can weigh up to 400 pounds, possessing the strength of 10 grown men. They're intelligent and emotionally complex, but also territorial and aggressive when they perceive threats. I've seen the footage of gorillas shifting from calm to violent behavior in seconds. It's a chilling reminder of their immense power. Their hands can grip with crushing force, and their jaws hold teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. I remember reading about Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, hoping to capture images that would speak to the animal's intelligence. King, the gorilla, seemed calm enough, observing the visitors with what appeared to be curiosity. Jessica started photographing him, excited to share her conservation message through these portraits. But then came the moment she reached through the fence, wanting to touch King, believing that physical contact would create a more powerful image. She misinterpreted his calm demeanor as friendliness, not recognizing the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing a potential threat. King's reaction was instantaneous. The moment her hand crossed the barrier, the 3 to 50-pound silverback grabbed her arm with crushing strength, pulling her against the chain-link fence. I can only imagine the scream of shock and pain that filled the air as his grip tightened. Other visitors tried to free her, but his strength was simply beyond human capability to overcome. He grabbed her head and shoulders with his other hand, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts took over, driving him to continue the assault. His powerful hands inflicted devastating trauma to her head, neck, and arms while she remained trapped. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase his aggressive behavior, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his fury focused on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion. Within minutes, her struggle ceased. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. Jessica was already gone. The subsequent investigation revealed that the Sunshine Primate Sanctuary was operating illegally, exploiting animals and visitors while providing inadequate safety measures. The facility was shut down, and the primates were relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs. Jessica's death led to enhanced regulations for animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation to support legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring her passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes. Then there's the story from March 18th, 2017. In an upscale neighborhood in Asheville, North Carolina, called Mountain View Estates, the first warm evening of spring had just arrived. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds, caring for the pets of wealthy residents. Maria had been a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele who appreciated her reliability and love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 at once. Her income helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, and builders were required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors. However, recent construction had disrupted animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her walks. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German Shepherds and a Golden Retriever, when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. I knew that black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I'll never forget reading about the sheer power of a mother bear defending her cubs. They can run up to 35 miles per hour, break down doors, even overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, capable of inflicting devastating injuries. The story of Maria, it haunts me. As she walked her dogs one morning, she encountered a 300-pound black bear with 2 cubs rummaging through garbage cans. The mother bear was feeding, the cubs were playing, and Maria, recognizing the danger, began to back away. But the dogs, agitated, started barking. That triggered the bear's protective instincts. She rose to her full height, vocalizing aggressively, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to retreat, but the barking only escalated the situation. The bear charged, covering 30 yards in seconds. Maria, entangled in the leashes, fell. The dogs scattered, leaving her vulnerable. Her neighbours had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property, moving between and close with hands scarred from countless bites. Badges of honour, she called them. Friends who still visited noticed the changes in her. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but Rebecca dismissed his concerns as jealousy over her dedication. The local veterinarian had stopped making house calls after one of the dogs lunged at him, requiring stitches. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of severe abuse; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed whose face told the story of his fighting past. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance over the past few weeks, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls, and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone, and emotionally invested in seeing progress. I've always found it unsettling how quickly things can change. How a creature you thought you knew, a creature you'd cared for, can suddenly see you as something else entirely. I've read cases where rescuers, people who dedicated their lives to saving animals, became victims themselves. It happened to Rebecca. She was going about her daily routine, feeding the dogs she'd rescued. The ground was wet, the air heavy, and something felt off. As she entered the enclosure, she slipped, the buckets of kibble spilling everywhere. Rex, one of the dogs, shifted. His eyes locked on her, no longer seeing his rescuer, but a competitor. He attacked. 90 pounds of muscle slammed into her, followed by the others. Titan and Scar joined in, their pack instincts taking over. It was a frenzy that lasted 10 minutes, ending only when Rebecca lay motionless, surrounded by the scattered food that had triggered it all. Her body wasn't discovered for 3 days. When they found her, Rex, Titan and Scar were euthanized, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous. Then there's the story of Camille Morel. It was April 3rd, 2017, at the Thor Zoo Safari Park in France. She was a fitness instructor, a woman of routine, who had decided to spend a weekend at the park for some peace. She'd stayed there before and loved waking up to the sounds of animals instead of traffic. She even planned to keep up with her running. The park seemed safe enough. The trails were well marked, and she'd read the safety pamphlet. Her chalet overlooked the wolf sector, separated by natural barriers and double fences. She trusted the system. That morning, she went for a jog, a quick 2-miler before breakfast. The landscape was a mix of calm nature and controlled wilderness. What she didn't know was that a maintenance check had been delayed. A service gate near her chalet had been opened, and the icy latch hadn't fully engaged. A worker, distracted by a mechanical issue, left without confirming it was secure. I keep thinking about Camille, the jogger. How quickly things can change. One moment she was on a familiar path. The next, she had unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclosure. She hadn't seen any warning signs, and she assumed the road looped back safely. She was nearly half a mile in when she crossed that invisible line. The wolves, restless after a cold night, picked up her scent. A zookeeper spotted her from the observation tower and radioed for confirmation. But it was too late. She was already inside. At first, the wolves didn't charge. They emerged slowly, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused, thinking the barrier must be nearby. But their posture shifted. She turned, saw the empty gravel behind her, and started running. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She sprinted. The zookeeper watched, helpless. Camille glanced back once, then her foot caught on the uneven gravel. She fell hard. Before she could get up, the lead wolf clamped down on her thigh. Another lunged at her shoulder. Her scream echoed across the enclosure. It took the rangers almost 10 minutes to arrive, delayed by having to reroute around the inner fence lines. By then, 2 more wolves had joined the pack. She tried to crawl toward a ditch, but the lead wolf released and re-gripped, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out, scraping at the gravel, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. The rangers arrived to find the wolves clustered over her body. Warning shots sent them scattering. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. There was no pulse. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. Her family filed a lawsuit, alleging gross negligence. The court ruled in their favor, and the park settled quietly. Afterward, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent audit were conducted. The Thori Zoo Safari implemented new safety measures, including interlocks and alarms. Not long after, on July 22, 2016, under the scorching Oklahoma sun, another tragedy was brewing at Wildwood Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student, discovered the sanctuary on social media. She was on a road trip with her boyfriend, Jake, seeking unique photo opportunities. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas, always pushing boundaries and seeking attention. Her psychology major gave her confidence, but her knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. She was fearless, or so she thought. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid for a close encounter experience, promising visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations. The facility operated in a legal grey area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos would never permit. African lions, apex predators, retain all their wild instincts. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, making them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions view humans as either threats or prey. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, and their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've seen photos that haunt me still. One is of a woman crouching next to a lion. It was taken just moments before the attack. Ashley thought she could get the ultimate photo, a close-up selfie with Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. She whispered her plan to Jake, asking him to distract the sanctuary owner while she climbed over the barrier. While Jake engaged the owner, Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclos and climbed over the 4-foot chain-link barrier. The massive lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes tracking her, but showing no immediate aggression. Ashley crouched down and extended her phone, trying to capture both herself and Caesar in the frame. That's when Caesar's demeanor changed. His ears flattened slightly against his head, and his tail began twitching faster. The attack was sudden and explosive. Caesar's predatory instincts activated as Ashley adjusted her pose, triggering millions of years of evolutionary programming. He recognized her as prey in his territory. The 400-pound lion launched himself at Ashley, covering the distance in a single bound. Her phone flew from her grip as Caesar's paws struck her chest, driving her backward onto the ground. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. The lion's jaws clamped down on Ashley's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his claws raking across Ashley's body, while his bite maintained its grip on her throat. Ashley's movements grew weaker as she lost blood and suffered spinal trauma. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but Caesar's aggressive posture made immediate intervention dangerous. Ashley's movements ceased within minutes. Emergency responders arrived within 30 minutes. But there was nothing they could do. The investigation revealed that the facility had been operating without proper permits and insurance, violating numerous state regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death prompted her university to implement enhanced safety education for students traveling during breaks. The incident led to stricter regulations for private exotic animal facilities in Oklahoma and enhanced enforcement of existing safety laws. It was May 21, 2018, in Grand Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner, leaving one storage bag unsealed near the cooking area. Giovanni Russo, 38, had worked these slopes for over a decade. A certified alpine guide, he and his wife, Eleanor, led small trekking tours. Giovanni was regarded as practical, someone who knew when to turn back. He'd grown up in Aosta, navigating the same valleys where his father once herded sheep. The Grand Paradiso region had become a focal point for conservation. Wolves had returned after decades of absence, a fact Giovanni respected but didn't fear. He saw himself as part of the balance between humans and wildlife. The couple's guiding company specialized in remote routes with minimal disturbance, and Giovanni often told clients that predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine, a mild ascent, and one night at a designated campsite near the Meadow of Almany. His clients, a pair of mid-aged hikers from Milan, had little experience in backcountry settings, but trusted the couple completely. That night, one of them had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed into the same area. Wolves in this region averaged between 60 and 70 pounds with lean grey coats. Normally nocturnal, they hunted red deer in coordinated packs. But in recent years, rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food waste was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling, first near the cooking area, then a faint growl. She thought it was a fox at first, until she saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag now lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who unzipped his sleeping bag and grabbed his flashlight. He stepped outside alone, the cold air hitting his face as he walked toward the food zone. The beam of his flashlight caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm on the ground. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands as he took another step forward, closing distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm in a defensive snap. Giovanni jerked back, but the young one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing through his injuries. The wolves held their ground, uncertain now, circling the dropped food bag. Eleanor tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I will never forget the images from that park ranger's report. Giovanni's body, still lying where he fell, partially covered by his wife's jacket. His face was untouched, but the left side of his neck, the deep, crushing injuries. It was ruled a tragic accident, a freak tear when he twisted as the wolf attacked. But sometimes, even when the facts are clear, the human element is just haunting. I remember reading about the Lawson family. July 15th, 2016. They arrived at the Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. Imagine that vast mangrove delta, a maze of tidal channels, the Ganges meeting the Bay of Bengal, ancient mangrove trees rising from the brackish water. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, yes, but one harbouring what they called one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems: saltwater crocodiles, venomous snakes. And then there was Genevieve Lawson, the 42-year-old real estate agent from London. She'd booked the most expensive tour, and from what I've read, she wasn't shy about making demands. Apparently, she'd already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times that morning. Her husband, David, tried to calm her, but it was no use. The teenage children, Emma and Jake, just watched, uncomfortable. She dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, with 15 years of experience in those treacherous waters, felt intimidated by her constant threats of negative reviews. The boat had safety barriers, specifically to keep tourists safe, but Genevieve saw them as obstacles. She wanted authentic jungle photographs. The Sundarbans are the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators adapted to the aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers, willing to hunt humans in the water. They can weigh up to 400 pounds, measure over 10 feet, and have 4-inch canine teeth. Their orange and black stripes provide perfect camouflage in the dappled shadows. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel. Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along the muddy shoreline. He cut the engine, whispered for silence, explained that a large male tiger had recently passed through. But Genevieve was frustrated with the distance. She needed closer photographs. Despite protests from her family and guide, she stepped over the safety barrier, lowered herself into the chest-deep water, camera held high. Unbeknownst to them, a 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream, detecting their boat's engine. Sundarbans tigers are ambush predators, using water to hunt. This particular male had killed humans before, recognizing the sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water, swimming toward Genevieve, only its eyes and nose visible. When Genevieve reached the muddy shoreline and began photographing the tiger tracks, she was completely unaware. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, propelling itself through the murky channel. The attack erupted with explosive violence. The tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve, clamping its jaws around her throat. Those 4-inch canines punctured her neck, crushing her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of bite force. The tiger's killing technique involves suffocating prey by crushing the throat. Her airway collapsed instantly. Her body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels, causing massive internal bleeding. The tiger's forelimbs wrapped around her torso, its hind legs finding purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. Then it began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water. I find myself haunted by the image of Genevieve, struggling in the water, crushed windpipe, severed arteries, the tiger holding her under until consciousness faded. It ended on November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, muting the sounds of the forest as Nikolai Baranov's radio went silent. He was 52, a forestry worker who'd spent most of his life in those woods, managing patrols near the Cody Allen Mountains. His work involved monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone near Dalna, his life synced to the forest's rhythms. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve after reports of wolves near villages. He left before dawn on his snowmobile, carrying bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. His colleagues said he preferred working alone, claiming a second engine scared off wildlife. The assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had become more active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. They could travel up to 20 miles in a night, hunger pushing them across the frozen ground. Their diet shifted with the seasons: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, desperation could blur instinct. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might trigger an ancient reflex. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted quickly. Gusting snow and dropping visibility. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn, through the unnervingly still forest. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations revealed prints from at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults and 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle to arrive. Darkness had swallowed the clearing by then. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalna for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss, with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae, consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then the scene shifts. It was June 14, 2015, in the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida. The gated community, built around interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from the comfort of his backyard patio, overlooking one of the community's scenic waterways. There are creatures in Florida that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Perfectly adapted ambush hunters, they can reach 14 feet in length, weigh over 1,000 pounds, and exert 3,000 pounds of prise per square inch with their jaws. It's a humbling thought when you realize how little we've altered some corners of the natural world. I remember reading about a man named Walt, who had moved to Florida from Ohio after selling his plumbing business. He was drawn by the promise of year-round golf, fishing, and outdoor living, something that had been impossible during Ohio's harsh winters. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, complete with a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks that became regular visitors to his backyard. Walt's evening routine usually involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset reflect off the calm water while tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. His community, Sunset Lakes, had been built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers had created an elaborate system of retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater runoff, also providing attractive water features for the residents. These artificial waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, creating corridors that allowed wildlife to move freely between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels throughout the region, bringing increased wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators in the community's waters over the past few months, but like most Florida residents, he had learned to coexist with the reptiles. His regular duck feeding, though, had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from throughout the area. Alligators are opportunistic feeders that will consume any animal they can overpower, including birds, fish, mammals, and, occasionally, humans who venture too close to their territory. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when he noticed that his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water near his dock, using a long-handled net to try to free the snagged lure from the underwater vegetation. He'd done this many times over the past 5 years without incident, confident that the shallow water near his property was safe for brief wading. The attack came from directly beneath Walt as he stood in the canal, focused on retrieving his lure. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks to approach the feeding area, exploded upward. The massive reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power, instantly fracturing the femur and severing major arteries. The alligator then initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its grip on Walt's leg. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal. The 12-foot alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased as drowning and massive blood loss overwhelmed his system. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the massive reptile, using specialized equipment and trained personnel to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains from the canal. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. Not far away, on September 8, 2010, the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun. Sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teemed with some of America's most dangerous wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with the activity of airboat tours carrying tourists deep into alligator territory, where massive reptiles basked on mud banks and hunted in the dark water channels. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was experiencing his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip he was taking to celebrate his recent promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background had given him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem solving had made him successful in his career, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. Michael enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends back home. That afternoon, Michael had joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat at all times. I've seen alligators in the wild, but nothing prepared me for the sheer power they possess. Adult male alligators, perfectly adapted for ambush hunting in the water, can reach 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their jaws can exert over 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. They can launch themselves out of the water with incredible force. Anything moving near their territory is seen as either food or a threat. The airboat tour had been going smoothly for almost an hour when the guide pointed out a huge alligator basking on a mudbank, only about 20 feet away. It was a truly impressive animal, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds, its ancient form still in the afternoon heat. Michael, one of the passengers, immediately started taking pictures, eager to show his colleagues back in Seattle this incredible creature in the wild. But his excitement got the better of him, and he leaned further and further over the edge of the boat to get a better shot. Then the unthinkable happened. Michael's phone slipped from his hand and began to fall toward the dark water. Without a second thought, he lunged forward, reaching out over the side of the airboat, desperately trying to catch his phone before it disappeared into the swamp. The alligator, with its predatory patience, had been watching the boat the whole time. Michael's sudden movement triggered its attack. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed right at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers desperately grabbed at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, while the alligator maintained its grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while holding on to Michael's arm. Michael's struggles grew weaker as massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing more trauma and ensuring its prey couldn't escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement stopped as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the next day, when wildlife officials located the alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately put physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and improved safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death led his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident showed the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and the Detroit summer heat shimmered off the abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs. animals that saw humans not as providers but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim street light like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to see. The dogs moved with a terrible coordination, encircling her. When 2 of them started fighting over food, Maria stepped in, a fatal mistake. In that moment, Alpha's pack instincts took over. He didn't see the woman who fed him. He saw competition. His lips peeled back, a silent snarl, and he launched himself at her. 80 pounds of pure animal force slammed into her chest, driving her backward onto the broken concrete. His jaws clamped on her left arm, teeth tearing through her jacket and into the flesh beneath. The other dogs joined him within seconds. The scarred pit bull grabbed her right leg, his jaws crushing bone. The 2 smaller dogs went for her torso, tearing through clothing and skin. Her screams echoed through the abandoned neighborhood, but there was no one left to hear. Their coordinated attack spoke to generations of predatory instincts. They weren't pets gone bad. They were wild animals that had learned to see humans as threats or prey. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss took its toll. The dogs showed no signs of stopping, their feeding frenzy triggered by blood and the thrill of the hunt. By the time they finally backed away, Maria lay motionless. Urban explorers found her the next morning. It took 3 days to capture all 6 dogs, and they were euthanized within hours. Rehabilitation was impossible. I remember reading about that case years ago, and it still haunts me. Then there's the story of Kendra Sullivan. On September 8, 2015, she arrived at the Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. 100 acres of forested island on Lake Victoria, a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees. The sanctuary provided a semi-natural environment where these intelligent primates could live in social groups. Kendra, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer, had been commissioned by a magazine to document the rehabilitation work. She was known for her fearless approach, building her reputation on intimate portraits of domestic animals. Her experience with horses, cattle, and aggressive bulls led her to believe she understood animal behavior, that it transcended species. Her best friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, went with her to capture behind-the-scenes footage. Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew increasingly concerned as Kendra dismissed his safety briefings and demanded access to restricted areas for better photos. Peter Sally, a caretaker, repeatedly warned her about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, but she brushed off his concerns as superstition. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite their rehabilitation, they retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts, making them extremely dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are among the most powerful primates on Earth, possessing strength approximately 5 times greater than an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds and stand over 4 feet tall, with massive chest muscles and arms capable of exerting tremendous force. Their hands possess grip strength exceeding 1,300 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bones with ease. And they have large canine teeth, over 2 inches long, designed for defense and dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra became frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She had requested access to maintenance areas where staff entered the enclosure for cleaning and medical care. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained that these areas were strictly off-limits due to the extreme danger. While the group was observing chimpanzees in a distant enclosure, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor that provided direct access to the animal's living area. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away from the group and entered the restricted zone, believing her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for any situation. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bosso, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult who had been rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bosso had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals in the facility. The chimpanzee was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial animals that view unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bosso immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera to photograph him, Bosso interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The powerful primate's response was immediate and devastating. Bosso lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and they are almost beyond comprehension. I remember reading about one incident where a chimpanzee, with a bite force capable of exerting 300 pounds per square inch, fractured a woman's forearm instantly. The instinctual targeting of faces, hands, and other areas. It's chilling. In this particular attack, the chimpanzee's canines, over 2 inches long and razor-sharp, tore into the victim's face and neck as she was pulled against a barrier. His hands ripped at her clothing. His feet kicked violently. It continued for nearly 2 minutes. His jaws crushed facial bones, tearing away large sections of skin and muscle. Major blood vessels were severed, causing massive bleeding. Her attempts to defend herself were futile. Fingers were crushed. There was no escape. Another man, hearing the screams, used high-press water hoses to drive the chimpanzee away after almost 2 minutes. But by then, the woman had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss and the shock of it all proved fatal within minutes. She died before emergency services could even reach the remote location. The investigation, of course, focused on security failures. Then I came across a different kind of story, one that unfolded on February the 9th, 2014, near Lang, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered through the boreal forest as 2 men set out on what seemed like a routine trip. David Lasky, a part-time wildlife photographer, was joined by his cousin Jeff. They were heading out to retrieve SD cards from trail cameras. They'd often hunted and fished together, but no longer carried firearms. They knew the region well, but this time would be different. I find myself haunted by the image of those wolf tracks surrounding the site in a broad ring, drag marks leading back toward the tree line. It speaks of a primal struggle, a desperate defense of territory, or perhaps simply survival. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination, a loss of blood from femoral artery trauma consistent with large animal bites. After the attack, provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from the bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting. But the distinction, in the end, mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then, just a few weeks later, on December 9, 2018, a hillside community in suburban Los Angeles Canyon Vista was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice and decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than follow the longer route along the main road. He was an honor student and star athlete, balancing academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush, while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-in canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance. But the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the intersection of nature and human hubris. The story of Brandon Walsh is one that has stayed with me. He was a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, a man who sought the ultimate test of courage. He found it, tragically, on November 3, 2015. It happened on the sprawling grounds of the Loner Exotic Ranch, a 300-acre facility in East Texas. This was no ordinary wildlife sanctuary. Wealthy clients paid handsomely for photo sessions with dangerous predators, experiences that legitimate zoos would never allow. Brandon had discovered the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always pushing his limits. He'd saved for months to afford this unique experience, seeing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. He had built his personal training business through dedication, helping clients overcome their fears. But perhaps his success had made him overconfident. That afternoon, Brandon paid the rancher's fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, supervised the session, emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers are formidable predators. Adult females can weigh up to 350 pounds, possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts, regardless of human contact. These solitary, territorial animals can become aggressive when their space is violated. Their jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 lbs per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon outside Sasha's enclos, capturing shots of himself near the massive predator. But he quickly grew frustrated with the distance, wanting closer contact for more dramatic photos. He convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access to Sasha, arguing that his physical conditioning would keep the tiger calm. Against his better judgment, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclosure. This holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the tiger. Brandon began posing for his camera, mounted on a tripod and set to take photos automatically. His fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing his confidence would demonstrate dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitching. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose, the tiger's hunting instincts activated. She launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power, her paws striking the chain-link fencing as her claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. Her incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, her powerful jaws snapping at him through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding. Her grip prevented any retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and force her to release Brandon. But the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack. His physical conditioning proved useless against injuries that no human could survive. I've seen firsthand how quickly things can go wrong when animals are involved. Brandon died from massive trauma and blood loss. Emergency responders arrived within 20 minutes, but it was too late. The ranch where it happened was operating without proper permits and insurance, violating state regulations meant to protect the public from dangerous animals. Sasha, the animal involved, was moved to a sanctuary. The facility was shut down. But Brandon's death echoed through the fitness community, a stark reminder of the dangers of using wild animals as props. August 19, 2013. The Missouri heat was heavy, and the air on Tommy Rodriguez's property was thick with the stench of neglect. He'd been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial strain had led him to cut corners, and those choices would cost him everything. His 20-acre property was a network of makeshift kennels, housing nearly 80 dogs in varying states of neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them for high prices to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money, I later learned, came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolled the perimeter, 2 cane corsos and 2 mastiff mixes. They weren't pets, they were weapons, trained to be aggressive. Financial press had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into his profits. He'd been cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat, were now getting scraps. What Tommy didn't understand was that hungry guard dogs are far more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, less tolerant of humans. But the dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, fighting over food, marking territory more aggressively and showing less respect for Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized the warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, he made his final rounds, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod, but his mind was on financial calculations, not the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point. They were no longer guard dogs. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, but exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain with nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his head lowered in a hunting posture. Behind him came the others, Titan, Rex, and Scar. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his jaws crushing bone. Titan went for the torso, tearing through clothing and flesh. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators, focusing on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I'll never forget reading about the end of Tommy's illegal operation. He'd used animals to protect his business, and in the end, they became his undoing. It's a dark irony that their hunger and desperation turned them into the monsters he tried to create. Tommy's body lay broken near the feeding area, partially consumed. The guard dogs, temporarily sated, retreated. For 3 weeks, his remains went undiscovered, providing sustenance for the very animals he exploited. Meanwhile, other dogs, trapped in kennels, starved. The stench of death eventually drew the attention of authorities investigating animal cruelty reports. What sheriff's deputies found was a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's remains were scattered. Dozens of dogs were dead or dying. The 4 guard dogs, aggressive toward the officers, were shot on sight. The investigation revealed the full scope of Tommy's operation. Breeding females in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from disease, financial records showing sick animals sold across state lines. The surviving dogs, in terrible health and aggressively conditioned, were euthanized. Tommy's death ended one of Missouri's largest illegal puppy mills, but the cost was immense. Then, on August 22, 2014, in the exclusive Cypress Point community, on the edge of the Florida Everglades, the intense summer heat shimmered. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands with artificial lakes, was a pinnacle of luxury. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, worked alone maintaining the grounds. Roberto had built his landscaping company from nothing, starting with a single lawn mower. He took pride in his work, always going above and beyond. His business supported his wife and 2 young children, and he often worked long hours in the Florida heat for their future. Cypress Point was constructed on former Everglades wetlands. Developers had created decorative ponds and water features connected to natural waterways. The artificial lakes were stocked with ornamental fish and surrounded by tropical landscaping, demanding constant maintenance. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, creating ideal conditions for wildlife to move between natural and artificial water systems. Roberto knew Florida's wildlife well. He'd encountered alligators, snakes, and other dangerous animals during his years of outdoor work. He respected them and always checked water features before working nearby. But on this particular afternoon, while trimming bushes around a pond, his hedge trimmer slipped into the shallow water. American alligators are perfectly camouflaged ambush predators. They can remain motionless for hours, waiting. Adult females can meet 8 to 10 feet and weigh up to 200 pounds, with incredible speed and power. They're most dangerous when protecting nesting sites or when surprised. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to disorient and drown prey. Roberto waded into the knee-deep pond to retrieve his trimmer, assuming it was safe. It appeared peaceful, well-maintained, with no visible wildlife. He'd worked around similar features hundreds of times without incident. The attack came the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom. A 10-foot female alligator, hidden among the vegetation, exploded into action, clamping her jaws on Roberto's right leg with devastating force. The bite fractured his tibia and fibula, while her teeth punctured arteries and muscle. The alligator immediately initiated her signature death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining her crushing grip. The violent rotation pulled Roberto into the deeper center of the pond. His desperate attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite harder and roll more aggressively. Roberto's screams echoed across the manicured grounds as the alligator continued her relentless death roll. The spinning dislocated Roberto's knee and hip, causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The pond's clear water turned red as his struggles weakened. A homeowner, hearing the cries, rushed to investigate. I've spent years studying apex predators, but some stories still haunt me. The waters around Neptune Islands, off the coast of South Australia, are home to some of the largest great white sharks on Earth. Apex predators that have ruled these seas for over 400 million years. I've read accounts of these magnificent hunters reaching lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length, designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. One incident, in particular, stays with me. It was March 22nd, 2017, when Tara Whitfield arrived at the Neptune Islands, one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. The remote rocky outcrops jutted from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal clear waters that plunged to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters served as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing the massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available and immediately began making unreasonable demands. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that money could buy her anything, she had already berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in these dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee who was clearly jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, The great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming, serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen firsthand how quickly things can turn fatal in the wild. I remember reading about a woman named Tara, who believed her money could somehow protect her from the natural world. She was wrong. She died within seconds, the water around her turning red, a stark reminder that some forces simply can't be controlled. Her story led to stricter regulations for shark cage diving, a small consolation for such a tragic loss. Now, let me tell you about Harold Thompson. It was a hot day in Alabama, March 22nd, 2015. The sun beat down on his 5 acres, the sounds of barking dogs echoing across the red dirt. Hank, as everyone called him, was 71 then, moving a bit slower than he used to, but still with that confident air that comes from 2 decades of breeding dogs. He and his wife Martha had built everything from the ground up, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What started as a hobby had become a modest business, with several breeding females and males producing litters they sold across the southeast. But age, as it often does, had brought a certain carelessness. In his younger days, Hank would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during their territorial phases. He knew what those dogs were capable of: the sheer power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. But experience had, perhaps, bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler. His massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers looking for protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The vet had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had only grown more unpredictable. Martha had voiced her concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes. But Hank dismissed her worries, stubborn in his confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. The water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, his dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily, despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain, I've learned, has a way of making even the most docile animals unpredictable. and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single, catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels, but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize the warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3rd, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But that quiet was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her "I've always been drawn to stories of survival, perhaps because they reveal so much about our relationship with the wild." The case of Sarah, the experienced hiker in Denali, is one that has stayed with me. She ventured into the Alaskan backcountry near the Tlat River during the caribou migration, a time when wolves were known to trail the herds. She wasn't naive. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and ample supplies. Solo travel was her norm. She meticulously planned her route, timed to coincide with the caribou migration, relying on her skills above all else. Rangers later mentioned she inquired about wolf activity, but showed no alarm at increased sightings. To Sarah, it was simply part of the environment. The wolves in that area typically weighed between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for stamina and speed, capable of covering vast distances, and possessed a bite strong enough to crush bone. Yet, they rarely bothered humans, subsisting primarily on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. However, scarcity or the scent of human food could sometimes pique their interest. That week, advisories had been posted about wolves trailing hikers. Sarah likely saw them, but didn't alter her plans. She was confident in her precautions. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided people. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone hiker on a gravel bar. It was Sarah, heading upstream toward her camp. She reached her final GPS point before 4:45 p.m. Her last photos showed the river valley and wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Tracks later showed she moved off the gravel bar toward higher ground. About half a mile from her tent, the first signs of struggle appeared. Her GPS recorded erratic movement, rapid loops, then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together what happened. The wolves had diverted toward her after the caribou passed. Sarah likely saw them and deployed her bear spray. But the wind shifted, causing blowback. It worked briefly, pushing the wolves back about 20 feet, but the scent faded. They circled again, emboldened. One group flanked her from behind as she retreated up a shallow embankment. Handprints in the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top. A wolf likely lunged, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps tore, consistent with a pulling force. A second wolf joined, biting her thigh. She fought back. The spray canister was empty, but the wolves coordinated, attacking from different angles. The ground was churned with soil and hair, suggesting a prolonged struggle. Analysis revealed crushing bites to her neck and shoulder, the kind wolves used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, a torn sleeve found 20 feet away, still holding skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night. The next morning, a helicopter spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel. Sarah's body was partially covered, her left arm missing. Her camera was collected, timestamps confirming her final photo was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed backcountry zones. Genetic sampling identified the wolves as belonging to the Tollet pack. Investigators concluded the attack began as a predatory test that escalated fatally. Because there was no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior, no removals were ordered. Rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who asked that the park not punish what it protects. I've seen the aftermath of alligator attacks, the grim reports, the statistics. But nothing prepared me for the details of what happened to Monica that day. She had apparently boasted that her legal background made her superior to the swamp guide, Tommy. She even threatened lawsuits when he tried to enforce basic safety protocols. Park Ranger Sarah Kim tried to warn her about alligator nesting season, but Monica dismissed it all as government overreach. The timing was terrible. It was peak alligator breeding season, when the males are incredibly aggressive, protecting their nesting areas. Park officials usually restrict access then, posting warning signs everywhere. These American alligators are apex predators. Adult males can reach 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their bite force is one of the strongest in the animal kingdom, capable of over 3,000 pounds per square inch. They have 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, designed for gripping and crushing. They can stay still for hours, then explode into action. Tommy repeatedly warned everyone to stay within the designated channels because of the nesting season. Tom repeatedly urged her to keep her distance and leave the area, but Sarah was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass, while Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I understand it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds, her powerful legs propelling her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs,